Hey guys, what's up? Zane here with Nico, Ryobeat Rodriguez. Doing a little interview in my home. Just going to talk about a few of the things that Nico's been pretty vocal about on Twitter. So Nico, MKSF season is upon us. I think actually all the ballots went in yesterday, right? And you've been pretty vocal about how on-the-come-up players should think about ranking and just ranking in general. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think... so pretty much my experience with MKSF was pretty much for the past 2 years I've been like on that come up nomination era, or like not era but like space, right? And a lot of the time at like my own locals, people just like super hype me up and just like put all these expectations on me, like, oh, you're gonna be MKSF top 100, that's like what you have to be, like we've played you, we know you have it in you. And I feel like once you get to that level, I think there's almost more pressure than there is to be in it, like in the 70s, you know? Because around that area, people have already know that you're good enough. But when you're in my area, it's very debatable. So people get more heated to say that their region's player is better than another. But the toll that takes on players' mentalities going into these nationals is crazy, because pretty much when you're in the 90 to 110 range, even 85-ish, what separates you from getting on it or off is usually a national performance, right? So we think about these type of wins look like Bobby Frizz beating Lucky, Moki beating Kobol, King Momo beating the Moon. Like those type of wins are the ones that are super applauded and that are recognized by most balloters. Even if you have like a good head-to-head in region, sometimes it gets overlooked because there's like a miscommunication of data, someone hasn't watched you enough, you don't have enough exposure. So yeah, once you get into that space, just knowing a lot of the contenders and my own like experience, all these nationals just have like crazy amounts of pressure. You can't lose to anyone, because then you lose out on your opportunity to make an upset. And if you drop that chance to make an upset, it's almost like you lost like $700.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, MKSF can be really important too, because it's arguably one of the biggest forms of visibility that our community has. Does that weigh on you, thinking of like, oh, potentially getting a sponsor in the future? I mean, right now you're sponsored by Makeshift, but you know, moving towards.
Yeah. So I think, I forgot who phrased this to me, but a big reason I think a lot of people care so much about MKSF is that because our game is so small in the first place, right? It's like one of the very few ways we can be recognized. And it's one of the ways that, like, if we walk away from the game, we have like a tangible thing to say, look, I was good in this moment. For me, I'm very lucky because I have a sponsor. Shout out to Makeshifts, obviously. But for people that don't have that, it's like if they don't get top 100, they feel as if their like presence in the scene was almost erased, you know, because they weren't recognized on that national scale.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's something I've been thinking about recently, but just the fact that MKSF is one of those, it's like now that we've moved out of the era of Melee sort of dying or whatever, MKSF is the thing to shoot for at the end of the year, you know? It's the thing that gives us a reason to play the game, because you gotta be ranked and everything. But do you think that it's healthy for players of all levels to move away from that mentality, or just on the level where you're on the cusp and there's more pressure?
So obviously it makes the most sense for those people on that cusp, but I would say across the board, when it comes to mentality, your goal should just be constant improvement, and depending on what your goal is, just focused on not results-oriented goals, you know, because again, like, when it comes to ranks, it's so almost RNG based, because let's say, like, for example, my, SmashCon run, I lost to Mewtwo King, which there was no potential for me to upset, and then I lost to Vortex, and the way that I lost, no offense to him, but I got timed out, and he's never done that to me before, so it's like I got like this very new strategy thrown at me that I wasn't ready for. It's like, well, there goes an opportunity that I could have pulled an upset, as opposed to, let's say someone around my range gets a favorable matchup. Let's say a Peach gets a Ice Climbers, or I don't know, a Fox gets a Puff. Then that like completely changes the game, and that can like just lead to them getting ranked. So depending on those factors in order to be top 100 is kind of silly. So I've been like trying to focus more on like what is it about my game that I can be proud of that isn't about like the win. So it's like, cool, let's say I beat Rishi recently. Do I want to prove that I beat a top 40 player, or do I want to prove that I beat a really good Marth who's good at Peach.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That makes sense. One thing that I've heard this a lot in Smash 4 too, because they, the matchups in that game are even more RNG based, sort of,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons why we see people getting second at one tournament and then 25th the next weekend. But I think Melee players have started to cotton on to that too, and we've seen a trend where certain people will actually not go to tournaments towards the end of the ranking season because they're trying to protect their ranking.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Ooh, so that's like actually a super prevalent thing even at like local levels.
Yeah. Right. Especially in New York.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, I was ranked this season 19th, which I mean I'm not going to snub anyone ranked above me or below me. I think we're all great competitors and like you can shuffle them how you will. But a big problem with or like when balloters of I don't know, the smaller ranks, like addressed my situation, they're like, oh, Nico has really good wins, but he has a lot of losses, as opposed to another player who didn't have any losses and had like 1 or 2 good wins. But the thing that they don't compare is the amount of tournaments you go to. Right. So, like in my local rank, I think for the season of like 3-4 months, I went to 35 tournaments. So it's like I was going to a tournament probably more than once a week.
Yeah.
Where I was obviously catching losses, and like I've always like learned that you want to strive to enter no matter the conditions. So that's how I address it. So I would go to a tournament even if I felt a little sick, a little off. I'm like, you know what? I'm going for the practice. But that doesn't necessarily pay off if your goal is the rank, because you don't get awarded for that. They don't applaud that. And I think it actually like led to a lot of balloters reconsidering this. I've seen some talk on Twitter about what do we do about people who enter 5 tournaments versus like quadruple that, and how do we rate that? I don't know the, I guess, formulaic way to go about it, but I know people are now starting to consider like people that go to less as a less risky option, therefore it should be weighed against them.
Well, part of that is that, the MIOM rank is really interesting in that from the very beginning, the way that it has been formulated is if you put all of these 100 players in a tournament, what would their placings be? And that's how people have been told to judge rankings.
Right.
Obviously, people take in a lot of data and stuff, but it is, at the end of the day, it's a calculation based off of about 40 subjective rankings.
Right.
Do you think that there's room to move into a less subjective ranking, like perhaps ELO or True Skill, to determine the skill of our players, or just give me your answer to that first.
So it's hard to say. I think because like the space of our tournaments is really complicated. Like we have regionals every week. We have like we weigh different tournaments differently. We don't account for secondaries and stuff like that, and sandbagging or drunkenness, or locals or stuff like that aren't put into these like scientific equations. That really messes with ranks. Like I think on one of the ELO ranks that I saw, I was like rank 60, and I was like, no, like I think I was like above Ryan Ford. I'm like, that is absolutely wrong. Like there's no way I'm that good. Like I know it for a fact. But maybe there could be like some sort of mix of like you come up with this data and then with the data that you get rearrange it based on that. But for the most part, I'm actually pretty cool with subjective rankings. But what I guess I'm not cool with is the public view of subjective rankings. I think maybe if we shift our perspective from this is a concrete, exact definition of who's good as opposed to these are people who we should highlight in the scene who are good, that are in like a tier of players, and they're not necessarily like definitively better than someone before or after them, right?
Yeah.
I just think a lot of people really get attached to the numerical value,
right?
And they're like, no, like Squid is exactly like 69th best player in the world, and I know he's better than like Ty or something.
Yeah.
It's like you have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also, it's interesting because those sort of algorithms are based on a scene in which players play consistently and go to the same amount, or about the same amount of events, and Melee very obviously is not that.
Yeah. I'd love to see like a number for like how many tournaments we have, and then like after that, like, how many are the same players even going to the same events, you know? Because that's a big factor, too. Where it's like a lot of people, like, for example, on MIOM rank, let's say someone's comparing me, someone who's like, I would say I'm like 95 to 110 range, someone like Moki, right?
Right.
Pretty much similar level. It's like, how do you compare his wins to mine if it's completely different regions?
Yeah, exactly.
Also subjective, how they view things.
Yeah.
It's like way too hard to gauge.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what makes it hard because, you know, I've seen people, a lot of people who have that one win. You were talking about Vortex. Vortex is a win on Westballs. That's amazing. Westballs is the top 20 player.
Yeah.
But I've seen people discrediting it because Westballs has been known to drop sets to everyone.
Right.
And he specifically has a Sheik problem.
Yeah.
But then how do you reach the medium between, oh, you know, it's just a win on Westballs,
right.
and like, it's a win on Westballs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who has that?
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
like a fair amount of people maybe at locals, but at nationals, he's actually pretty consistent.
Yeah.
It's like, I think a lot of people, like, specifically on the Westballs case, like, I think he goes to probably the most amount of tournaments of, like, the top 25, or at least he's in, like, the top 3 to 5. I think Hungry Box is also in a similar area. So it's like, he's so bound to drop sets, and I don't doubt him for losing maybe 4 or 5 sets to non-50 players when he has positive records on more than 80% of them, right?
That's a good point.
And then with Vortex, it's very weird because there's, like, 2 camps, right? Where it's like, one camp says, oh, it's a win on Westballs. I don't really like mind, or like I don't really care about that because it's Westballs. I'm not going to rank him at all. And then there's the other camp that like super puts this Westballs win on a pedestal without even looking at his local ranks, right?
Yeah.
So like for example, I don't know how many people know this, but Vortex won the Arcadian this year. So if he could be top 100, that would be the nuttiest thing, right? Like, so where do we stand on rankings if that's the case?
Okay, there was some flubbery involved with that.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
he had inactivity that prevented him from being ranked. But I see what you mean.
Yeah. It's like for sure. Like I'm not saying that he was like he's the best Arcadian probably in the world. Or maybe like around there.
I think
Who's the other one?
Santi probably when he won the
SoCal
he
Arcadian. Did. I forgot about Santi.
That was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Or Laudandus. That's another example.
Oh yeah. But yeah, like pretty much like even though he was let's like discard that point.
Yeah.
He wasn't even for like the past 3 seasons that happened this year where he was like relatively active. I don't think he had the wins for that level. He's very consistent. Yeah, that's always been like a Vortex strength. Right, but even then, like, what do you say about those things? You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's always hard. I think I just mentioned Laudandus, and I remember one of the True Skill rankings because he had his incredible Pound 2016 run. Where he got 5th, and then he didn't go to stuff for a while after that. So for a long time, Laudandus was ranked as like 23rd in the world.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he would make fun of it. He had it like in his Twitter bio. But it's hard because Melee is such a weird scene. Do you think there need to be, because one thing you've also talked about is that locals are dying out. Yeah. That's something you have the opinion of. And people have gone back and forth on that. A lot of the Massachusetts people do not believe that very strongly. But MIOM rank, I think, is one of those things that is sustaining our scene. Can you think of anything else that might help to keep our scene growing or at least not stagnating?
Right. Okay, so let's see. I think one of the bigger problems we have is that I think we have too many regionals. So you have a lot of top 30 players meeting up every single week. And what that does is it affects locals in the sense that people would rather just net play at home and watch their favorite player, you know? Right. It's not as expensive as taking like maybe a train or a 30-minute to 45-minute car drive down to a tournament where you have to buy food, venue, singles, all that stuff. And so that hurts the local scene, but it also hurts like stream numbers, and I think it hurts just overall attendance at nationals because I feel like we're starting to lose a storyline, you know? It's like one of the cool things that we have or that are found in other games is that like they have championships maybe once a year, maybe 4 times a year. Right. But for us, it feels like those players can play at any moment. Right. You know? Like especially the Summer of Smash, I think was very cool back in 2015. But as we get to this, it's like we're running out of narratives to find. You know, we get hyped for, let's say, Mango Armada at Evo, but then they play next week. So then what do we say about that set? What's the storyline going into it?
Right, exactly.
So I think that's one of the big ones.
Yeah, and that's why MIOM-Rank, I think, has so much importance placed upon it, because that is, in a sense, MIOM-Rank is our championship.
Yeah,
you know? That's it's the closest thing we have.
Right.
So, yeah. Do you think there's any other way to save locals? Like, is it just top players coming out?
So that's a very interesting, because I used to think that too. Like, I was a big proponent of, like, you know what, top players are being really lazy. They're just staying at home, not playing other top players. But as we've seen, or I don't know if you've seen in New York, like, it's almost been, like, a really stacked, like, I would say 20% top players. So, like, let's say, I don't know, the last Nebs or Nebs recently would have Hacks, DJ, Rishi, Big Kid, and some other, like, borderline players, Vortex sometimes, G Money, Beer Man, and that's just, like, one of those players doesn't make top 8, right?
Right.
At a 30-man local.
Right.
So it's like there's almost like a sweet spot to it, because I think, like, when top players were coming a lot back then, it helped, but then there was a period in time in New York's history where Hacks was coming so often that he was beating everyone so bad that no one enjoyed watching anymore, you know, because it's just like the same result. You know, you show up, you know Hacks is going to win. It's like, who gets second, which is a less, I guess, cool thing to watch as a spectator or someone that shows up. I'm not really sure what locals can do outside of, like, I think the locals themselves are fine. I don't think the TOs are inherently getting worse, as some annoying people like to say, or like the venue fee raising is what's changing it, because we've had a $10 venue fee for, like, as long as we've been in the community, pretty much, and we've been able to offer $5 as, like, we've developed. But I think it's just going to come down to things that aren't at locals. We need to promote, I guess, more people getting into the scene, and I guess just promote that, like, community-based interaction.
I think storyline is, like you said, a really important part of it, because I think one thing that's rejuvenated the New York scene briefly, it was like, oh, watch Hacks return to form on a completely different controller that's banned by every tournament. So and obviously the documentary was one of the things that was a whole bunch of storyline. Like, that's one of the things that made everyone want to play in the first place.
Right.
So
that can also be said about Smuckers' rise. I think when he came about, and, like, we had this, like, and, like, the storyline I've always, because I used to be, like, I've always been, like, I guess, a good player of my region, but for the majority of my time I've been a TO and a social media guy, because I just wanted to promote that. And one of the storylines I always followed was the old school versus the new school, where, like, G Money, Hacks, DJ, even the Moon, to a sense, like, they're the only ones winning tournaments. Jaden, and Smuckers just comes in and says, like, you know what, like, I'm gonna disturb that. Like, he was one of the first players to beat DJ that hadn't been playing already for, like, 7+ years, right? So that was a really cool storyline to watch, and it showed other local players, like, hey, this guy who's, if anyone doesn't know Smuckers, like, a very wholesome, down-to-earth guy, like, someone like us can go through the ranks. So that was really cool to watch.
Right, but then there's the flip side of Smuckers is extremely wholesome and down to earth, but he's not a esports personality, right? He likes to keep to himself, and so I think another part of what we're dealing with is, as Smash becomes more esports, and if you want to get sponsored, you have to have a personality. It's hard if you don't, right? Like, I love Smuckers, and he's really, really good. But he himself, he enjoys going to regionals more than nationals, because and he doesn't like being in the spotlight that much. So it's hard to imagine him getting sponsored. We see. I think at the top level, we do see concessions made by esports teams because the players are so good.
Right.
Like, M2K, Echo Fox has done an amazing job with branding him, and then even Plup isn't the most, like, social person, but, you know,
that makes sense.
He's incredible at the game.
No, yeah, that's actually a really good point. Thinking about, like, how local top players, or even people on the cusp of being top players and locals, need to, like, develop their social media and branding, right?
Yeah.
Because that contributes big into the storylines.
Right.
That was actually something that, like, I made a goal at the beginning of the year. Actually, I had, like, 250 followers on Twitter, and now we're out here with, like, almost 1,000. I, like, super grew into it, and I, like, just learned that, like,
in order for people to not only shed a spotlight on me, but onto the people I play,
Right.
you need to consistently tweet about what you're doing, what stream you're on, and stuff like that, and that really helps. Like, the mention of Hax's name in just the Twitch link is enough to change from 100 viewers to 200 viewers.
Right.
And if every top player were to do that, let's say Swedish, Moon, DJ's pretty good about it though, and other top players in the top 10, top 15, then maybe we get more growth. You know,
it's something I talk to Mike Hayes a lot about because Mike went through a phase where he was not very good at the game, but he was like the most active Smash streamer with the swag house and everything that he had. And so actually he got a lot of hate because people were like, Mike isn't good. And now Mike is an amazing player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody absolutely knows who he is because he's had that history where he just promoted himself a lot.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like social media kind of goes hand in hand with getting good sometimes, which is unfortunate to think, but I feel like you just get a lot more opportunities and spotlight, and people, even if you're not that good yet, people think you're good automatically. Like, a lot of the time, or what I've noticed from my own social media growth is like, all of a sudden, like, I'll go to nationals and everyone knows who I am, and they think I'm going to pull an upset over someone who doesn't have a social media presence. I think actually a great comparison would be me and Maybe, right? Maybe is a great guy, really funny, very full of memes and fun and stuff, but he has no social media presence. He's not as socially expressive as I am. So I think a lot of people look at our like results, or they look at us in like the same space at a national, and they don't consider him on a level that I'm on. Despite the fact that if you look at our years, they're almost identical. Like I say, we're like by the end of the year, we're pretty interchangeable. If you have like me on the top 100 or him, like either one is the right option.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going forward, we talked about MKSF, we've talked about locals dying, we've talked about just Smash stagnating in general. Do you think there's a chance Smash is just dying? Like that's
Smash is just dying.
It's Melee. I mean, like that. We've had our what is it? 16 years now.
So I think we're definitely like stagnating a little bit, but like I mean everything like reaches stagnation at some point. You know, like we've had like an absurd amount of growth. If anything, I feel like maybe we grew too fast. Not even like as a bad thing, but as a reason for this stagnation, right? Like. The jump from I want to say 2014 to 2015 was crazy. Like we every single tournament we broke records for the biggest tournament. It was unbelievable. So I guess if we look at this year in comparison to last year's, maybe we're not doing so hot, but we were doing exceptionally hot. You know, it was crazy. So I think we still got a lot more in store. There's a lot of big factors to what will determine that. I think a lot of cool things that we can look forward to is the resurgence of Leffen. We can look at Plup the New God. PPMD might come back this year. I hope. We have Metagame coming up.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
We talked about narrative, and that's shout outs to Samox.
Yeah, Samox, you're incredible, dude. But yeah, like all those things like really like can bring like another resurgence of Melee if they all happen at like good times and if it's presented in a good way, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, for what it's worth, I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, I think we're doing good. I think we got at least, I think a lot of people always say 5 years, but I think a little more.
It's so weird because at the same time that we're all like, oh, it's stagnating, like we've had the biggest prize pools ever this year, right?
Yeah.
There are obviously people who want to put money into the scene, and I think it's hard because we don't want that world where, oh, how good you are is determined by your social media presence, but in some ways it might be something we need to embrace.
It's like, it's always been a weird thing, a weird space for me because I started the game in 2012, right? And it was so incredibly grassroots, like, I would go to a No John's that started 3 hours late in the snow with 20 people, and that was good. But now it's like people will take like Nebs for granted, even though it's like 40 setups in the center of New York. Like, I don't know what more you could ask, but yeah, maybe we do have to just embrace that we're shifting more towards a more esports side of things.
I think we all need to become like anti. I think. Is
Yeah,
the
anti
answer. I
knows
mean
what's
that
up.
really seriously.
No, me too.
too.
He really knows. Like, I think he has. Like, if he played, like, in terms of Melee, I think he has probably. He would still be top 5 Smash personalities for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Maybe top 5, top 10.
And he's one of the Smash 4 players who could switch to Melee and like.
Yeah, he's really good. I've played him.
Quite good at Melee.
And
Nakat's pretty good too.
Yeah. Shout out to Nakat.
Because they've been playing for forever.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No, yeah, like Anti, like, and you know what's a really crazy thing about Anti? He isn't even like one of the gods. Like, I think he's outside the top 20 right now on the PGR ranks. Right?
Yeah, I think he's like. I think he's like right in the top 20.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah.
But like you compare him to like who's someone in our 20s? None. Like none.
Yeah,
Crush
he's sort of
ish.
top 20.
Yeah, so like that
He's
area,
around
Duck, right?
Right.
I actually have him pretty high on my list, but anyways, yeah, like that area, like they're fathoms less on social media than Anti is, and it's crazy to think that. So I don't know what formula he has that like makes his Twitter so good. I think he just establishes himself.
He's
as,
just
like,
really funny.
Yeah, he has a great personality. Obviously, like, not to condemn a lot of the Smash players. Like, again, like, you could just not be made for those type of things. Like, I think in some ways, social media presence, you kind of have to, like, I don't know, build your ego up a little more than you may want to.
Right.
And some people feel uncomfortable doing that.
Right.
But yeah, like, there are a lot more players with anti-like personalities that aren't capitalizing on it, right?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing is when you look at Anti and his Twitter, the thing it reminds me of is like when we started playing, like the trash talk that went on at tournaments is just on Twitter, you know? And I don't know. Maybe the thing to save us is just that Leffen needs to start trash talking everyone again.
Yeah, I actually am super excited for like the rise of Leffen. I thought he like had such a cool like that's period of time where he was winning like 4 tournaments back to back, and people were like, "Is he gonna be best in the world? He's gonna win Evo." He has a narrative that no one else has, and I think he really capitalizes on that.
It's true. Yeah. All right. Any last things you want to say? Any shout outs? Any words of advice or hope?
Yeah, this has been like a pretty sad talk, but everything's all good. Melee's great. Obviously, if you're watching this for the first time, I know it sounds sad, but like the's still a lot of fire in the community.
Can you imagine this is your introduction to Melee?
Yeah, it's like, welcome to Melee. Everything's dying and everyone has stress. No, Melee is amazing. There's still so much growth, and like, go to your local scene. That's probably like my biggest thing that I want to push. Like, there's so many good people, and just like make friends, make connections, and stuff like that. The community is so sick. I want to shout out Tri-State, especially New York, because I love New York a ton. Shout outs to Makeshift, the best sponsor. They're really cool. This is a little low key, but we're gonna have a new player soon.
Really?
Yeah, it's gonna be super sick.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be announced soon. And yeah, that's about all the people I want to shout out.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Nico.
All right, awesome.
Pray for Nico to be on MIOMRank top 100, but it doesn't matter to him. It's all good.
It doesn't matter. I'm gonna improve regardless. Oh, and follow me on Twitter, Ryobeat, at Ryobeatpeach.
Yeah, and just again, since I'm just starting out on this YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, leave a comment. I'm going to be at Genesis in January, and I actually got some stuff I can't tell you guys about that I'm going to be doing there. That'll be fun. But I will be doing interviews too, so please let me know who you'd like to hear from, and I will reach out now and see if they'd be down for interviews. But yeah, please subscribe. I need 100 subscribers so that I can have a custom URL. So
that'd be sick.
That's an important landmark. I think we're like 25 away. So yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much, guys, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.